Daniel 8 begins a detailed look at the future of the world from Daniel's time to the end. This chapter covers the beginning of that future, spanning from the Medes and Persians to the Romans, but it mostly focuses on the Greeks in between.
In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at the first.
This vision came to Daniel during the Babylonian Empire, before the events of chapter 5 with the writing on the wall. He already received the vision from chapter 7, or that which appeared unto me at the first, a couple years earlier.
And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass when I saw, that I was at Shushan, in the palace, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in a vision, and I was by the river of Ulai. Then I lifted up mine eyes, and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last.
This is talking about the second beast empire known as the Medes and Persians. The Medes started things off by conquering Babylon, but then the Persians became more dominant of the two. They were one single empire, but consisted of 2 nations, and the Persians were the higher horn.
I saw the ram pushing westward, and northward, and southward, so that no beasts might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. But he did according to his will, and became great.
They came from the east, from the land of modern-day Iran. This ram is obviously symbolic of an empire, so the beasts mentioned here aren't talking about animals. This is talking about world domination.
And as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes.
Here comes Greece from the west. I honestly don't know what touched not the ground is referring to, but the notable horn is definitely Alexander the Great. Isn't it interesting that notable and great can be considered synonymous in this context? Daniel predicted the coming of Alexander the Great during the Babylonian Empire more than 200 years beforehand.
And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and brake his 2 horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great. And when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven.
If you study the history of the Greek Empire, this is exactly what happened. After Alexander the Great died, the empire was divided by 4 of his generals into 4 sections.
And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great toward the south, and toward the east, and toward the pleasant land.
One of those 4 sections became the most dominant, and included the land of Israel and Jerusalem.
And it waxed great, even to the host of heaven. And it cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground, and stamped upon them. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host. And by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. And an host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered.
There was a Greek king named Antiochus Epiphanes, who was written about in 1 Maccabees, which is not scripture, by the way, but can still be generally trusted as documented history. He attacked Jerusalem and stopped the sacrificial system in the Second Temple. He put a statue of Zeus in the temple and sacrificed pigs, an unclean animal. The Jews weren't too happy about that, and they eventually revolted. While I have to admit I don't understand everything in these verses, I believe they clearly have to be referring to Antiochus Epiphanes.
Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, How long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice, and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under foot? And he said unto me, Unto 2,300 days. Then shall the sanctuary be cleansed.
The 2,300-day prophecy. That's 6 years, 4 months, and 20 days using a 360-day calendar. This is probably the most difficult prophecy I've had to deal with so far. I've done hours and hours of research on this multiple times over the years, trying to find the perfect calculation. I remember years ago finding a website that explained it perfectly, and I've remembered it throughout the years. But of course today I can't find that website anymore, nor any other that teaches the same thing. Yet I am still completely convinced, mostly because of chronology, that this prophecy was somehow already fulfilled in the days of the Maccabees and Antiochus Epiphanes. But I will admit that I can't prove a precise calculation. I believe the 2,300 days started on or before the day Antiochus Epiphanes sacrificed a pig in the temple in the 145th year of the Greek Empire. They ended when the sacrificial system started up again in the 151st year. But despite my inability to precisely rectify this mathematical prophecy, I still believe the ruling principle of context demands that this is talking about the days of the Maccabees in one way or another.
And it came to pass, when I, even I Daniel, had seen the vision, and sought for the meaning, then, behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of Ulai, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision.
This is the first time we see Gabriel mentioned. He appears before Daniel and looks like a man. But we are told in Luke 1 that Gabriel is an angel. We also find out in Daniel 9 that he can fly. Then we will see in Daniel 10 that he is one of the most powerful archangels along with Michael. He is told by another unidentified man's voice to interpret the vision for Daniel.
So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid, and fell upon my face. But he said unto me, Understand, O Son of Man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision. Now as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep, on my face toward the ground. But he touched me, and set me upright, and he said, Behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation, for at the time appointed the end shall be.
We see the phrases, the time of the end, and the last end of the indignation here. That must be talking about eschatology, right? I don't think so. We will see in the next verses that he's still talking about Media and Persia, Greece, and Rome. I think it's talking about the end of the pre-cross era.
The ram, which thou sawest, having 2 horns, are the kings of Media and Persia.
This is clearly talking about the past.
And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king.
This is clearly talking about Alexander the Great. He was the first king. If you try saying this is future, the great horn can't be the first king.
Now that being broken, whereas 4 stood up for it, 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power.
Again, this is exactly what history teaches about the Greek Empire splitting into 4.
And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance, and understanding dark sentences, shall stand up.
In the latter time of the Greek Empire, a new king came around. I'm not sure if this is talking about Antiochus Epiphanes, but it might be. But I think it's talking about Rome conquering Greece.
And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. And he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people.
This also could easily be describing Antiochus Epiphanes or the Romans.
And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand.
The phrase, by peace shall destroy many, makes me think this might be about the Romans. They had something called Pax Romana, which is Latin for Roman peace, but it certainly wasn't peace. It was a false peace enforced by Roman law, which basically just killed anyone that they thought were disturbing the peace. That's just a satanic version of peace. Notice it also says, he shall stand up against the prince of princes, which should clearly be understood as a reference to the coming Messiah, Jesus Christ. Rome was the ruling empire when Jesus walked the earth.
And the vision of the evening and the morning, which was told, is true. Wherefore shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days.
Remember, this vision was given to Daniel before Babylon fell. The Greek and Roman empires obviously came many days later. The phrase many days does not inherently mean the end of the world.
And I, Daniel, fainted, and was sick certain days. Afterward I rose up, and did the king's business. And I was astonished at the vision, but none understood it.
Even today, this chapter is astonishing and not able to be truly understood. I will admit this has been the most difficult chapter so far, but my understanding of it, presented here, is based a lot on my understanding of how it fits in with all the other chapters, which I do understand much better.